Welcome back. This is another episode of Sorry for Rambling. As always, I'm Alex Cack, and today I am joined by Phil Collins, not the singer, but the Prohibition Party's 2020 presidential nominee. Phil, how you doing?
Hi, okay. Thanks for inviting me.
A pleasure to be here. Phil, how long have you been involved with the Prohibition Party? Let's start there.
6 years.
6 years. What drew you to that as a political institution?
The party has a platform with about 10 issues, and I agree with a lot of the platform. I've never been drunk, so that part is okay with me. And the platform also says they're pro-life and pro-Second Amendment, and want lower tax rates, lower federal spending, and more control of education in the hands of state, local governments. And I think all those parts of the platform are great. I agree with them.
Yeah, a lot of people don't realize the Prohibition Party is, I believe, actually the oldest continuously running third party in American politics. It's been around for quite a while. It is a very conservative party. It's a right wing party. I guess my key question is why the Prohibition Party instead of why cast your vote for Phil Collins instead of Donald Trump, for example, or one of the other more conservative candidates that will be on the ballot.
Well, the party's not conservative on all issues. The platform states that we are against capital punishment, and they care about the environment more than in some parties. The platform is probably original. Some people might like every part of our platform and not every part of some other party's platform.
And those are, of course, I mean, those are in themselves big differences from what you might find in, say, the Republican Party, um, especially when it comes to the issue of capital punishment and some of the stances on the environment. I'm curious. I mean, the issue in regards to I mean, kind of the founding of that party of prohibition, specifically alcohol prohibition. Is that something that you're really passionate about as a candidate, as a political figure? Is that something that you are going to aggressively pursue?
No, I very aggressively that our platform states that unlike before, we wanted a national law to ban alcohol. Right now, we think it should be done more at a local level with laws to at least restrict alcohol. So ways passed more by state and county and city governments.
So it's not something that you would seek to do on a federal level. Are there Prohibition Party candidates running at lower levels?
Yes, right now I have one candidate for city council in Massachusetts. I forget which town, unless he was moved from the ballot. But I think we have one candidate there right now.
Now, the party's existed for a long time, but it is one of the, even for the third parties, it's now kind of one of the smaller parties. I don't believe that it has kind of ballot access automatically in any state. Are you going to be appearing on the ballot in any states in this upcoming election cycle?
Yes, sure, I'll be on the ballot in Arkansas, and Mississippi, and probably Tennessee, Vermont, and Colorado. Maybe I'll be on the ballot in California. I won a primary there in March. There were 5 candidates for that party's primary president, and I was first, about 33%. California has 93 counties, and I won about 80 of them.
That's an impressive margin.
That party is the American Independent Party. They knew that I was mainly running for the Prohibition Party, and they said it's okay if my name was on their primary ballot. That they're going to make the decision on August 15th, and I'm going to be a write-in candidate in about 7 states, mainly in Northeast. I think Pennsylvania, Connecticut, Rhode Island, and I forgot what the other ones are. I'll be a write-in candidate in some parts of Illinois. They're write-in candidates who want to run statewide have to fill out notarized forms and have them sent to all the places where they want their write-in votes to get counted. Usually county clerks or city election commissions if they have their own election authorities there. So if I wanted to get write-in votes every part of Illinois, I'd have to send those forms to 109 places. I know I'll send it to at least 2 places where I'm going to get votes.
Now, I mean, so the kind of obvious and big question here always is, I mean, are you actively trying to win? Do you think you can win?
No, I don't think it's possible for me. Even if I get the most votes in all of those states where I know I'll be on the ballot, I couldn't get enough electoral votes to win. I hope that I'll get more votes than the Prohibition Party candidate got 4 years ago. He got about 5,000 votes. He's on the ballot in 3 states. I hope I'll get at least 8,000 votes.
So, you know, the question I think a lot of people have is if it's not possible for you to actually win, why bother to run?
To remind people about the harmful effects of alcohol, because it causes problems with the heart and liver, some kinds of cancer, and remind people that our platform has our views about 10 issues. And if they know about my campaign and read the whole platform, they might see important information about all of those issues.
Now you've been involved, you said, for about 6 years with the Prohibition Party. Were you politically active before that? Were you affiliated with a different party?
Yes, I was active in the Republican Party before that. In 2013, I won a nonpartisan race in the Chicago area. I'd like to be a township trustee. The race had 6 candidates for 4 seats. I spent about $10 in my campaign. I beat 2 incumbents.
That's how'd you pull that off?
I think I was the only candidate in the race who used Facebook and Twitter campaign. And I went to some houses and gave some campaign literature about myself. I only went to houses where I knew that the voters usually voted in local elections in odd-numbered years.
Just
Last
good old-fashioned field work right there.
Yes, last year I ran another nonpartisan election. When I lived in Las Vegas, I ran for mayor. The race had 7 candidates, and I was in second place, even though I'd only lived in Las Vegas for 2 years, and majority of the people who did worse than I did lived there for about 20 years. And that time I spent about $50.
You know, making the jump from a public trustee to running for president, that's a big step. I'm not sure how many people have done it before. What inspired you to run for president of all things?
2 years ago, a couple other members of the Prohibition Party emailed me and asked me to run, right? Because they knew that I'd held elected office before and thought I had more political experience than any other member in the party who might consider running. So I thought I decided to do it.
And how many members would you say that the party has overall? If you were to guesstimate, I mean, are we talking in the thousands, or are we talking in the hundreds? I mean, how many people are really active in the Prohibition Party today?
I think about 100.
About 100?
Yeah.
And do you guys have chapters in every state, or how does that work?
No, let's see. I forgot. I mean, in chapters in about half the states, and in about half of those states, chapter only has a few members, but there's a good chapter in New York. There's a monthly newsletter of the New York Prohibition Party. That's emailed to their members. I'll be a write-in candidate in New York too.
So, obviously campaigning is harder for everyone, during this COVID-19 pandemic. You mentioned going door to door and canvassing earlier. What are some strategies that you guys are trying to employ to get the word out about your party and your campaign during these times?
I've done several interviews like this on Zoom. I was interviewed by a reporter for Christianity Today magazine because he thought a lot of religious Christians want to know about the Prohibition Party. We're probably going to have some radio commercials on Memphis radio stations, because it'll be on the ballot in Arkansas, Tennessee, and Mississippi, and some people from all 3 of those states listen to Memphis stations. So that'll probably help me get votes in all those states.
Now I'm curious. You mentioned Christianity Today and the idea that Christians may be interested in the Prohibition Party. Is faith something that's important to you?
Yes, I've been a Christian all my life. My dad was a pastor. My wife is a pastor. I have a cousin-in-law who's a pastor. I was on a couple church councils.
And how has your faith kind of impacted your political views or your political activism?
I think some Bible verses caused me to be pro-life, and it probably caused me to donate to some charities because some New Testament verses ask people to help the poor. So I can think of.
Now you mentioned that you've never been drunk in your entire life. Have you ever had a sip of alcohol or been under the influence of any substance at all?
Yes, I've drunk a little. I've consumed a little bit of alcohol, but not enough for me to be drunk.
And is that something that you still do from time to time, or is that something that there was a clear point in time where you stopped?
No, I do anymore.
And I mean, what about your family? Are do you have drinkers in your family, or is that something that is kind of family wide? Is that kind of an off limits activity?
Oh, my wife drinks a little bit, and my dad doesn't anymore. He hasn't had alcohol for about 20 years, probably, even though I used to drink before that. And I'm not sure about my other relatives.
Now, you mentioned not wanting to go back to federal prohibition like we once had in this country, but things like dry counties, possibly dry states. Do you think there should be criminal penalties attached to that, or just the stopping of commercial sale?
I'm not sure about penalties, and that's not in our platform. It doesn't give that much detail. It says we prefer state and local governments to do something about it. I thought it meant uh, by restricting the days and times when uh, when stores can sell alcohol, and uh, they, the enforcing a punishment of stores who sell liquor to people under 21. Make sure fewer people at that age range drink it.
Well, and of course, I mean that's some of those are goals in both of the major parties. Um, how would you suggest that they go about kind of reducing underage drinking?
So state and local governments could increase the fines for stores who sell that, because store employees know about it. Might be more of a deterrent.
Well, and in many states, I think most states, they're pretty stiff currently. I mean, liquor board violations are something that are not there's really people don't shake a stick at them. And you could lose your license, face heavy fines. I mean, I think in some areas you might even be harsher penalties than that. And yet we still see people getting around it. Oftentimes, when people are drinking underage, it's because they're getting someone overage to make the purchase for them. Um, and since in the 80s when we went to 21 drinking age, it wasn't until very recently, the most recent kind of group of teenagers, that we saw any reductions in teenage and youth alcohol consumption. Uh, do you think that we need to change course, or do you think we just need to double down on what was happening?
You should double down a little in the places that aren't enforcing it well. I'm not sure which states those are.
Well, and what would you say should be the solution for states and counties and cities that are already very aggressively doing so, yet still find occurrences of underage people drinking on a pretty regular basis, where they haven't seen the enforcement cause a reduction?
And the voters should pressure elected officials, like sheriffs, to make sure the deputies in those areas enforce the laws better. Pay some sheriffs, so make sure it's done better if they think they'll lose the next election. They want to run again.
Well, and I think that kind of gets around the question a little bit, though. Is that, there's, I mean, what I'm asking is in a lot of places that doesn't match what we've actually seen happen. We see aggressive enforcement. There's probably no more of it that a city police force or sheriff's force could do than what's already being done, at least in the current letter of the law. And it's already considered very aggressive in a lot of areas, whether it's slapping teenagers with different penalties, fines, jail time for intoxication, whether it's going after business owners, busting up house parties, college parties. These things are already very aggressively policed, and yet, like I said, until very, very recently, we haven't seen any reduction in the desire for young people to drink. And most people who are studying it seem to think the reduction we have seen recently has more to do just with the cultural trends of what's in vogue for teenagers now. So if that kind of criminal enforcement wasn't solving the issue, would the Prohibition Party say, okay, we need to take another direction to achieve this goal? And if so, what would that direction look like and be?
I think it would help to have better education, like in health classes in high schools. There might be some who don't mention the harmful effects of alcohol enough. And in those places, people should ask their school boards to make sure that alcohol and their harmful effects are mentioned a lot in those classes, because kids are better educated. Some of them might abstain from it.
And I think there's a lot of people who would agree with that. I'm curious. Obviously, I mean, alcohol is kind of the historical basis for the Prohibition Party. Do you support kind of the ongoing drug war and the prohibition of other kind of narcotics and mind altering substances? Do you take a different view on different types of drugs? Where does the party as a whole and you as a candidate stand on those types of issues?
Yes, I agree with outlawing. Drugs are outlawed now, like marijuana and cocaine. I'm glad that the police try to arrest anybody who uses them. I don't think the federal government needs to be used much for mainly city, county, and state police should arrest people for those crimes.
And so, when it comes to like FBI drug enforcement, or for example, groups like the ATF, the DEA, what do you think of the role of those types of law enforcement agencies?
I They should mainly be used for other federal crimes like bank robberies or kidnapping, and if they happen to see that somebody they catch is using a little drug, then I think they should be able to arrest that person. I don't think they should concentrate on that. Be for other police departments.
I'm curious, how do you feel about other legal substances? Tobacco and nicotine are a huge conversation point right now. What are your personal thoughts on them? What, from a policy standpoint, do you think should be done?
Well, I personally have never been a smoker. I tried cigar once, cigarette once, and pipe once, and I didn't like any of them enough to try to do it again. I think the laws about them are okay now.
Okay, so I mean, you wouldn't be seeking any increases. I know. I mean, we're entering into kind of a new era with some of these things. We have electronic cigarettes and Juul. There's been a lot of conversation about the marketing in regards to these. The current White House had talked about banning certain types of flavors and additives. There's been restrictions placed on the marketing in many countries. Are those policies you'd like to see, or you'd like to continue to pursue at a federal level, or are you not in support of those types of decisions coming from the kind of federal power structure?
I don't think we need that kind of law, and our party platform doesn't mention e-cigarettes, so I don't think any government. Well, I'm sure not. I don't think the federal government should do anything to restrict e-cigarettes at all.
Well, Phil, I want to thank you so much for coming on the program. We are getting towards the end of our time now, but that is Phil Collins, Prohibition Party candidate for President of the United States of America. I'm Alex Cack, and this has been Sorry for Rambling. Thank you so much for joining us.